Visionary, Chief Officer of Strategic Growth at Special Olympics Michigan, strategic communicator, partnership developer, mother of a Special Olympics Global Ambassador. This is Empathy Unbound, Embrace Your Superpower, and our very welcome and very special guest today is Jen VanSkiver. Jen, welcome to our podcast, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk a little bit about your current life in a while, but I want to start off by asking, who is Jennifer VanSkiver? What helped create the person that's been kind enough to join us today?
My goodness, what a journey, right? Um, how did I become forged? I like to use that word forged because it was hard fought to get to this point in my life. Not a path I think that I would have chosen outright, but one that I'm extremely grateful and privileged to have had. And I think this journey started, motherhood changes everybody, but when you're the mother of a special needs individual, it changes you in the most unimaginable ways. So my daughter Claudia was born 24 years ago. She has special needs. She does not have a specific diagnosis, something that when you look at her, you can see. So she has cognitive impairments that are a genetic issue, but immediately when she was born, we didn't know. And so we had to get through those first few formative years and watch her miss milestones almost inexplicably, and then just kind of use we just had to eliminate things as we went. And so it was very, very tricky. Without a prognosis, you don't have a diagnosis, Andrew. So therefore, no plan. Therefore, no understanding of potential barriers. You don't have a parent support group. You don't have a 5K you can run to raise money. None of those things are in place. So it took us a while to get there, to accept what we were living and to try to figure out the best path forward for our family. And it really, really took several iterations of our family to try and arrive at the point where acceptance didn't feel like giving up. Acceptance felt like embracing. And that's where we are today. And there are a few, very, very few, I can count them on two fingers, formative, transformational moments in our lives. And the first one that we experienced was with Special Olympics Michigan. And so, what an honor it is for me, years after my daughter became involved with this program, for me to live this evolution with her, and then to become a part of it as an actual employee.
It's pretty, it is a very special cause, and and I think it's great that Claudia is a global ambassador. That's a pretty cool job, really.
She is. She is. It's an aspect, I think, of Special Olympics globally that few people know. I think that most people, when you hear the word Olympics, right, you think every 4 years.
Yeah.
You think it's sports and sports only. So you think of it more as a one-time sporting event. And truly, what Special Olympics has become is a global movement for inclusion that uses sports as a catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
So sports is where it begins, but it certainly doesn't end there. And so, just kind of, I guess the nutshell of that, Andrew, is when Special Olympics brings an athlete into the fold, and that athlete for the first time puts on a jersey and belongs to something bigger than themselves, and learns how to communicate. Here's their name being cheered from the stands, for the first time by people who don't even know them. When they achieve even something as small as catching a ball, not to mention making a basket or a touchdown. These things do something to us physiologically. They change the way that our brain works. They bring about emotions that have never been felt before, that need to be named and curated. And it's so funny. I used to watch the athletes very intently because I saw that happen in my daughter. I literally watched it unfold in front of my eyes. But now I watch the parents. I watch the parents in the stands. I turn my focus, to the left and to the right instead of forward, because I want to watch other parents have that experience, and you can see it on their faces. So once that athlete, that family, kind of meets their son or daughter for the first time in some way, I think we could say, you can't turn that pilot light off again. You can't do it. It just gets brighter and brighter and brighter. There's an energy, there's a curiosity, there's a drive that is born, and you have to do something with it. So Special Olympics loves to have wraparound programming where it harnesses that energy, that self discovery, and it helps our athletes try to find ways to use that in the broader community. That's part of the Global Ambassador Program. There are other programs like it that take it even further, but what we try to do is teach our athletes that they have a wonderful story, that they're not just inherently valued, but they're actually bringing something to the community by doing things and being themselves. And that's absolutely extraordinary.
It is, and I'm sure a lot of those parents might have been told the words, your daughter, son won't, can't, shouldn't, isn't able, etc. And then when they, well, like I say, when they see these milestones that perhaps they didn't expect to ever happen, or perhaps when they first had their son or daughter, they didn't realize, well, they wouldn't necessarily realize such an organization existed. And then when you find it, and I think everybody's always known that sports has an incredible role to play in people's lives, but when you feel that your child, son, daughter, or yourself, a sibling, might be excluded from that sport, to be able to then come to that sport must be yeah. I'm sure there are a lot of happy tears in the stands when you see something. Wow, I didn't know they could do that. Wow, when did you learn that? It's that. Yeah, it's fabulous. I can't think of a negative to it at all. Really.
There really isn't. And I think I think people are really, I think they underestimate the power of sport. Eunice Kennedy Shriver, our founder, 50 odd years ago, never did. I mean, the Kennedys were, America's royalty,
Yeah.
and certainly express themselves through sport, achievement, public service, all of these things. And I don't know if you know the background story, but there are obviously several children in that generation of the Kennedys. Rosemary Kennedy, who people don't know that much about, um, was born into the family with an intellectual disability. And at that time in the 50s, we didn't have names for these things really, and there certainly wasn't a place for it. And what ended up happening is that Rosemary was hidden from the public. I think because she was genuinely and generally misunderstood. She ended up being institutionalized and lobotomized, unfortunately, which was a path, a very common path in those days, and kind of hidden away. And over time, the family came to grips with the fact that that is a loss for the world.
Mm.
And Eunice, who I think was the sister closest in age to her, certainly emotionally closest to her, when she kind of understood and learned this as she grew into adulthood and public service, had always been a sports person, a swimmer, most importantly. She thought this is not right, and so she, in her sister's honor, went out and invited individuals from the local area to come over and learn how to swim in their backyard. And then that turned into different yard games and different things on the Kennedy compound property out there in Cape Cod, and then grew 50 plus years later today to millions and millions and millions of people around the world finding themselves through sport, and then the community seeing these individuals and working pretty hard to find a place for them because they see that they can contribute in ways that they might have dismissed outright. And so that's the beauty of it. And I love that the Kennedys, and such an aspirational family. I love that they are just like us.
Mm.
That and you would aspire to be what the Kennedys were, so politically powerful and captains of industry and so on. Um, but for our families, to see that the trials, the tribulations, the fear, the angst can be in any family, that's pretty powerful. And I
Yeah.
think it behooves us to do whatever we can with whatever means we can to support that movement.
Mm. And one of the things we touched on briefly before we started recording was the tens of thousands of volunteers that make this work, as well as their sort of seemingly handful of paid workers. But I think it's one of those things where you assume you're going to get something from it as a volunteer. But I think it's very likely people get far more from it than they ever expected, and come back week after week, year after year. And that's it's the same with so many sports around the world, but in particular for I think the Special Olympics, when you have the tens of thousands of volunteers, that without whom it would be very, very difficult to put a lot of these events on. So I think the volunteers do a huge role as well to make it happen, which is fabulous.
They truly do, and our volunteers, it's interesting because people, think, wow, I can't commit all that time to be a coach. I can't do this. I can't do that. We're an organization of can. We can for our athletes and we can for our volunteers. Putting on our games that happen annually, putting on the local competitions that happen year round, as you mentioned, day in, day out, week in, week out. We need people of all sorts. So it's not
Mm.
just being a coach to volunteer. It's helping to
Mm.
put on special events.
Mm.
It's helping to put on, it's helping to sort medals or paperwork. It's helping with transportation. It's helping with chaperoning. It's helping with fundraising events. It's happening. It's all of that. And so there really isn't a volunteer, a person. Let me say this: there really isn't a person I've met who kind of had this look in their eye, like, well, I'm thinking about it, who I haven't been able to convince. Not because I'm amazing at it, but because the opportunities are far broader and
Yeah.
more arrayed than I think they understood. And we need all of that. Yes, as
Mm.
we were talking earlier, we've got fewer than 50 employees that work for Special Olympics Michigan. Yet we have programming happening every single day in every zip code throughout our state. So you bet it's on the power and the love of our volunteers.
Yeah, I had a look on the website last week and again today, and I thought, well, this can't be right. It was like there's a events drop down. It's like and Monday and Tuesday and Thursday. What is it? Literally something happening just all the time. And I also read, which I thought was amazing. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but the world's biggest Special Olympics facility is being built in West Michigan,
That is
and that
correct.
hopefully will open relatively soon. And I think that will be and it sounds pretty sizable. 4 or 5 football pitches, pickleball courts. There's all the images looked amazing. So that will mean a lot to the athletes to have that dedicated space for them, rather than having to beg, borrow. I won't say steal, beg and borrow sort of space from somebody else. So that's amazing. I think that's a fabulous achievement.
Oh, thank you. We're very, very proud of that. Yes, so West Michigan, the state of Michigan, is the
Mhm.
first or has the largest facility. There are a couple of other states that have facilities, but they're smaller and don't have as many resources as we do. Additionally, our facility is a former high school
Yeah.
that had switched properties and kind of left this facility and all its acreage intact and was up for sale. And we thought to ourselves, just as you pointed out, my gosh, we do have to beg, borrow, and I won't say steal, but sometimes it feels like it. We have to ask pretty forcefully, for place to play. And because we don't generate revenue like high school or collegiate sports or club sports,
Mm.
we get what's left over, and that says something to our families. That says something to our athletes. Of course, we're always grateful for what is offered and given, and we accept it, gratefully. But to have a facility with our logo on it, right? That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. And to play someplace that prioritizes our sports. We actually are a community facility as well. So whatever we have developed, as you mentioned, pickleball, flag football, soccer,
Mm.
golf, we have basketball, all of those things, volleyball. It is available to the community, but only when it is not being used by our athletes. So it's kind of the inverse proposition of where we were before. So yeah, it is 130,000 square feet. It is 17 acres of property. The thing that makes us very, very unique and the largest is because in that 130,000 square feet, we also have 10 other nonprofits like ourselves that serve the intellectual disabled community in some way. So think a disability advocacy group is there,
Yeah.
a mental health group is there, a Down syndrome association is there, autism support is there. We have a housing organization, nonprofit that helps to find housing for individuals like my daughter as they transition into independence and adulthood. Deaf and hard of hearing. The list goes on, and that makes us a service hub. So that's very unlike the other two, I think, facilities in the country. Again, size, but also scope. And so a lot of happy accidents are going on, Andrew, inside this building. And we are learning so much from each other. And we're also able to do something that foundations are really excited about, which is to kind of put all our logos on requests from instead of duplicating and fighting for
Yeah.
money. We're really able to collaborate and do things very intentionally, and that means quite a bit to the foundations in the area. I think there's a lot of economies of scale that we're able to
Yeah.
latch onto. And then I think finally, we also have a 600-person auditorium. We converted the media center into what is now a very large and dynamic meeting space. We've got classrooms that we kept as breakout spaces. So what does that add up to? Conference facilities. So what we love to be able to do is to welcome in speakers, associations, corporations to hold their retreats and meetings there. And what that's and when they walk in, do you know what they see? The very first people they see at our front entrance are athletes who are employed as ambassadors. The people who are going to help them find their location and wayfind throughout the building are athletes. The people who will
Fabulous.
welcome them are athletes. They are seeing people doing, they're seeing people contributing and finding just a meaningful place in the community. They're seeing people work. And that's transformational, especially to corporations in the marketplace. So we're showing the capability of
Mm.
our athletes. So there's nothing about our property, nothing about our campus that starts by defining what a person can't do, which is pretty much how our loved ones grow up, right? You have a diagnosis, that's a whole list of things you can't do.
Yeah.
School welcomes you in with, an educational plan that lists all the things that you can't do. So therefore, here are the accommodations you need. We didn't structure our system for you. We'll accommodate you.
Hmm.
This is the phrasing. This is the verbiage. This is the system and the vibe. Healthcare, same thing. So it doesn't really matter what section of the society our people find themselves in. It always leads with what they can't do. We are the one place that is the inverse of that. And I'm very, very proud that we have created a beacon that can show society how we ought to be considering rebuilding our systems, spaces, and places.
That's very powerful. Yeah, I think you are a super persuader. I think when you get potential donors that come and look at this new building, people working there, they'd be opening their wallets and their checkbooks and their briefcases full of money, and so they should. And this question is almost defunct now because of everything you've said and what you've already demonstrated. But you've, and I'm not trying to embarrass you, but you've had a stellar career, um, and
Thank you.
still are having one. And I'm sure there were better funded and, dare I say it, higher paid roles that you'd easily be on the sort of top of the headhunters list to do. And I know your daughter's involved in it, but so are so many other people's daughters. But why did you decide to put your talents to use for the Special Olympics?
First of all, thank you. That is very, very kind. I am very proud of my career, and I don't think that at any other point in my journey I could have done this job properly.
Hmm.
Um, there are requisite skills that this job requires. My role oversees all of the revenue coming into the not only the facility and the monetization of the facility, but also into the programming, right? The sports programming, the leadership programming, our healthcare programming, all of that. And that works through not only, as I mentioned, the conferences and the tenant income for the building. It is, governmental allocations to us. It is corporate investment. It is flat out philanthropy. So there's requisite skill involved with some of that. And I certainly do think at points earlier in my career, I could have done that well. Um, but that's not enough. And it also isn't enough for me to be a mother. That doesn't qualify me for this job either. I think it is the wisdom of being now in my mid 50s, having my daughter make her transition into adulthood. She is 24. So I'm watching her become. I am watching her flourish and find her place. I'm also watching missteps. But what I think I have now is a wisdom and a resiliency that I didn't have before.
Mhm.
And I think that those skills help me perform well in this job. I am able to see our families in this organization. I am able to pretty quickly size up and identify where they're at in their journey. All journeys are different, but there's some pretty fundamental basics that all of us have in common and share. And I think that when it comes down to helping to organize the programming or create the story to raise the money, to bring in the investment, I can speak to it both from many perspectives now. I can speak to it from the marketplace perspective, why the investment is important, where the ROI is, how quickly we can amortize that. I can speak to where parents are on their journey, and I can hopefully be a speck of light somewhere down the tunnel, which says to them, "You're going to get here. You will arrive here, and when you do, we're waiting, and we're also walking alongside you until you get there." There are just lots of combinations of things that I've been through that I would never have chosen this path, but I feel that I have been given an opportunity to put that to work in a very unusual way. And I've done the corporate gigs and I've done those things in the past. In fact, I was a hospital administrator for 13 years
Mm.
immediately prior to coming here, doing very much what I did there, I'm doing here. So strategy, those types of things. And and it's wonderful. And I've served some amazing organizations that have made some marked change. Um, but nothing like this. Nothing like this. Nothing that speaks to broader humanity in ways we can absolutely measure, and in all the best ways. In all the best ways. We have metrics, certainly, but we also measure things like hugs and smiles, and achievements, big and small,
Mm.
daily and lifetime. We measure things in a much different way, and it's the kind of thing that feeds a person's soul, whether you're with us for a minute or you commit to us as an employee or a funder. It is absolutely transformational, and I think at a time in our world also where we have, especially here in America, a lot of divisiveness, a lot of rage, contempt. We've pulled away from, I think, connecting to true values. The values that bring communities together, the values that connect us as human beings. I think the opportunity to work in an environment like this is something I personally needed. And I think the ability to bring people into our movement, regardless of what sector of the economy or society they work in, I think we have something people need, probably more than ever at this point in American and global history. I think we have something people really, really need.
Yeah.
And I'm able with my platform to make it widely available, and that is a huge privilege.
And I think one of the big things that you do is to give people a space to talk. Know there's other people that have been through this thing, that are going through this thing. And one of the reasons that I was very glad when you agreed to come on the podcast. So my sister's what 2 years younger than me, so early 50s. She was born with what we define it here as learning difficulties. I guess, and there was no diagnosis. It was no. She the teachers picked it up when she was probably, gosh, I want to say 7, 8, 9. At the time in the UK, it was very much you go off to a special school, and it's a school just for a very very mixed bag of people really, and not trying to bring people along in mainstream society, whatever. She's come through that amazingly well, and she holds down a job in a supermarket. And lives at home with my dad now, but yeah, no, there wasn't anybody to sort of talk to really. There wasn't anybody to go. There wasn't any there wasn't any example of joy really, or an example of the smiles and happiness. It was always we know that this isn't quite as it should be, and she had sort of speech difficulties early on, and I think I was, as I'm sure lots of siblings are, I was very guilty of sort of understanding her and then interpreting for everybody else, which didn't help her at all, really. But I think as a slightly older brother, you think, well, no, I can understand her, and not realizing that your parents are trying to get us to talk properly. But yeah, there wasn't a place to go to look for happiness, joy, welcome, someone to talk to and stuff. And I think what you guys have done and are doing, and people around the world are doing, is so important, as you say, about just showing that there is happiness, joy. Of course, there's frustration. Of course, there's annoyance. Of course, there's disagreements, arguments. Absolutely, but fundamentally, yeah, you can access joy, and that's such a powerful thing. I think. Yeah.
Oh, it truly is. I had my mother said something to me. Oh gosh, I don't even remember exactly what brought it about, and my years get muddled. But we had, I think, gone through our third round of genetic testing, in
Mhm.
desperate search for what is it?
Yeah.
What is
Give it a name. Yeah, yeah,
this?
absolutely.
If I can name it, I can tame it.
Hmm.
And we just weren't really getting anywhere. And I was extremely frustrated. And I mean, as you can probably tell, I'm very much a intense person and a type A personality. That's what's helped me do very well in my career. But it doesn't always work in relationships. And when we were faced with this kind of question mark of a future, again, no diagnosis, no prognosis. We just didn't know what to expect. I was just absolutely trying everything to get at what is it. And my mother mentioned to me, I had come home frustrated after yet another doctor's or genetic testing appointment, and she mentioned she had been with CJ early, my daughter CJ Claudia, earlier in the day, and something really amazing had happened. I honestly, Andrew, can't even remember what it was, but whatever it was, she was trying to tell me about it, and all I could do was focus on where I had been and what I hadn't heard, and all of
Yeah.
these things, and the fear of what's to come. And she said, Jen, um, I know you're going to be upset with me saying this, but I feel compelled to say it. You're missing it. You're missing it. CJ is not a project. She's not a problem to solve. She's a human being, and she's doing some truly, really beautiful things. And I need you to see it. I need you to see it on a day like today. And I was very upset to hear that. It was extremely defensive. Felt like that was an arrow to my heart. I'm working this hard because I love her, because I need her to be safe, because I need her to have a life when I'm not here. And it took me a few years to kind of understand that and process what those words really meant. She, of course, as most mothers are, very right. And it was a process for me to work through not only what that meant, but how to truly internalize that. And I do think that what the Special Olympics platform, what we are able to do for families as they enter our ethos, is to give parents that that restore the umbilical connection.
Mm.
And it's extremely powerful. Finding joy, understanding your child, worrying less about what's going on in their brain, and feeling what's happening in their heart. That is what is going to determine their future. That's the thing. It's not test scores. It's not, sitting still in class. It's not being homecoming queen. It's none of that. It's none of those things, not truly. It's how do they view themselves?
Yeah.
And so and then in turn, how do we allow them to find their place and get out of the way? And I have found that here at Special Olympics, that actually joining this organization, or actually prior to that, seeing my daughter flourish inside this organization, is really what helped those words connect for me. I had heard them years earlier, but they kind of didn't. The synapse didn't
Mhm.
form until I had that immersive experience. And my goodness, Andrew, how I want to provide that for our families around the world.
Yeah. Your mum, as most mums do, sounds pretty smart. But it is. I think almost the first chapter in the book that doesn't exist for parenting is protect your child. isn't it?
Mm.
Keep them safe. And I think, and I, I've got a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old, and the 17-year-old's hopefully going off to college next year. Certainly doesn't want to stay at home, wants to go off and spread her wings. And part of me is like so protective. Wow, really? Do you really? You're only 17. Do you really want to go away? But the other part, I mean, the bigger part is they have to let her have those experiences and she'll grow and flourish and all those things. But there is that massive part that wants to protect people. And in protecting people, we sometimes limit their chances to fail at things. And if we
Oh,
don't ever fail at things, you don't know what you can achieve really. And yes,
oh,
I'm sure people get frustrated when they miss the football or they get tackled in flag football or they don't jump as far as last time. But it's all the experience, isn't it? And it's how each of the athletes responds to the other ones and sort of supports them and the crowd and everything else. And that's the thing. It's how do we accommodate for risk and the chance of failure and being upset? 'Cause they're all things that are okay. Because as parents, we want to wrap them in cotton wool and, and just keep them home and keep them safe all the time. That's not the way forward, is it? Yeah.
it's very true, and I think the unfortunate thing for families in our community is that sports really is, I think, globally, certainly in America, but globally, that opportunity for young people to
Yeah.
try to spread their wings and figure out who they are. Are you a follower? Are you a leader? Where
Yeah.
are you resilient? Can you cope? And our children in our community um, are culled. They're culled from that very, very early. I mean, my goodness, my other daughter Lily, who's 21 now, but played soccer her whole life. I mean, she was coached to be a single sport player by the time she was 10. What are we doing? But at
Yeah.
any rate, so that pressure is very real, and the community that comes from that is very real, and we don't have that for our loved ones.
Mm.
So CJ was eliminated from that easily by the time she was 6 or 7. So we lost, the opportunity to have parents and friends, that come from that sport.
Hmm.
We lost the opportunity for her to find herself and for us to see her in her authenticity.
Hmm.
And what Special Olympics does is it comes along and it fills that gap and it plugs in for our kids, where regular society, just hasn't caught up yet. One of the things that I'm very, very proud about in our movement is that we're very, very large in the K-12 school system. So, you can be a Special Olympics athlete from the age of 2. We have our developmental play and our young athletes program. And then when you hit the age of 7, you can start to compete on teams. Usually, when you hit high school, they have what we call unified teams. It's typically basketball or football or something like that. But
Yeah.
that's where our individuals with intellectual disabilities play on the exact same team as somebody who doesn't. And they play in pairs, they play together. And it fosters friendships, relationships, understanding, skill building, and it spills out off the court
Hmm.
and off the field into lunchtime and proms and hallway fist bumps and things like that. So I'm very, very proud of that. And my hope, Andrew, is that we've been in the schools now about 20 plus years. So we've graduated a few classes that have gone through it all the way. And I think I do see that promise in these generations that are coming about, as they enter the marketplace and as they enter society, they expect people like my daughter to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. The power of true inclusivity can't be overstated. And yeah, I was saying that certainly my daughter's schooling, it was very much about separating
Mm.
people. Which when you think about, yeah, but when you in society, there's no separate queue or separate line or separate train carriage or separate airline for people. It's all together really. There's something, and I might paraphrase this, so I apologize. Words matter. They have
Mm.
enormous power. The language and tone we use when speaking to and about people is so important. And I took that from a post that you put on LinkedIn. And firstly, I have to say I completely agree. And I just wondered if you could expand on that a little bit about why words and language and tone are so important.
It matters because it frames what we believe about ourselves. And so if you are using language that divides or diminishes, even in a joking manner, um, people hear it and it's forming opinions. It's othering. It is separating you from whoever it is that, another group. It is disconnecting you from their existence and their lived experience. It's divisive. And words, we use a lot, we bandy about a lot of disparaging terms in today's society. And we almost make it a sport in and of itself, especially as we sit behind computers and behind screens. It's very easy to do that in the anonymity, of your home or wherever you are. And that is extremely dangerous when we start to other groups of people. And it doesn't matter if it's based on zip code or bank account status or skin color or religious belief, or intellectual variance. It doesn't, or physical, any of these things, or who you choose to love. Words matter. And I think COVID all taught us something. As we were all kind of hunkered down in our homes and reconnecting with our families. And if there was to be any sort of silver lining out of that terrible situation, maybe it was that. One of the things I think society learned is what it's like to be my daughter, with fewer options and
Mm.
welcomed less and isolation. Our people face that. Well, it's a part of our existence. That's what Special Olympics is trying to work so hard at doing, is to bust apart that and bring our people out into society. So we talk less about accommodating them and we
Mm.
build and plan for them in the first place. That's lovely. So words matter, Andrew, because it frames our narrative, it frames our belief system, it keeps us connected to basic human needs. And I think we need to, it's very easy to type, it's very easy to dictate, it's very safe to do it from behind a screen. And I think if you would not say that to a person's face, you shouldn't say it at all. But because we've become so physically disconnected from one another, I think it's become easier to do. And I think as a society, we need to be far more intentional than we've allowed ourselves to regress to for that reason. It is very, very hurtful. It can lead giant belief systems can become movements themselves and lead to policy decisions. So then it's not
Yeah.
just the words, it's our infrastructure that creates barriers between us. We're pack animals. We need to be together. We need that. We need to feel that we belong somewhere and to somebody. And I
Mm.
think that those words, we have to really do a very good job. It seems very basic. The six sticks and stones may break my bones. Um, they can. They can. And so I think it's really important for us to learn from history so that we don't repeat it and not revise history while we're at it.
Yeah, and I think for both you and I, social media, smartphones didn't exist when we were at school. Yes, to our younger listeners, there was a time before smartphones and social media, and it was different, wasn't it? Things might have happened at school in the hallway, but then when you went home, that was it. You close your door, you close it behind you, really. Whereas now, I was having this very conversation with my children, Alexander and Madeline, last night, just talking about how important it is that we say things to people online in the same way we would say it to them in person. If we wouldn't say it to them, why on earth would we say it? But there's still a frustration that I have, and uh, one of my really good friends, it's probably the funniest person I know. Actually, she happens not to be able to use her legs, so she happens to be in a wheelchair. Um, and it's not laughable now. It's just so frustrating still that if we'll go out for a drink or go out for dinner or whatever, um, people will ask me what she wants. They'll talk to me, and thankfully my friend is has a very sharp and cutting wit, and they don't do it again. But yeah, we still have that thing where people don't talk to, and I'm sure you're finding the same, that it's challenging where people don't talk to the individual, or they can't see beyond what they think they can see, and they think they understand something that they don't understand, and there's still that frustration. But hopefully the more visible, the more mixed, the more inclusive situations are, then the more we'll see that just not be the case anymore. People will just talk as you talk. Some people want to talk, some people don't want to talk, and it's as simple as that, really.
I would hope that people would, curiosity is a word I like to use a lot. Be
Yeah.
curious. And so if you kind of approach situations, whether or not they're uncomfortable or just
Mhm.
unfamiliar, if you approach it with a genuine curiosity and not a gawking, which again leads to the othering, you be curious. Don't be afraid. Ask. Ask
Mm.
questions. Saddle up. Start a to somebody. Start a conversation. Be curious about who they are, not what you see.
Yeah.
I think you'd be very surprised. And I think that society's missing out on a lot when we lack curiosity.
Well, you might ask a question and find out you're talking to a Special Olympian, and that's pretty cool. You wouldn't know that if you asked the question. I mean, you sort of you started down this line, and it's something that really frustrated me for a long time when I was in sort of the corporate world. Is that there's obviously lots of laws and regulations around making sure buildings are accessible to people in wheelchairs or people that are blind or all those different things. But there seems to be still very little done to take account of people that have a disability that isn't visible or have
Mhm.
something that they need particular changes for. And I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago, just son I called up for dinner, and talking about how the sort of recruitment, how we recruit people hasn't changed since I can remember, really.
Yeah.
Apart from AI coming in and supposedly sifting through all the letters and stuff, but we still recruit the person that has a good smile and a strong handshake at the interview. We don't recruit for the actual tasks that need to be done. And I know there are so many talented people out there that might have some element of autism, might have some elements of ADHD, might have there's a million things that they might particularly have, and could do the job absolutely brilliantly, but because of the way they might interview, don't necessarily get the chance to show how well they can perform. And is part of the hub that's been developed, is that going to be around getting people into careers and work and showing people that this is a massive talent pool you're missing out on. You're really
Oh,
missing out on talent here. This is not a charity thing. This is something that's going to do your business good. We're not asking you to take somebody that can't do the job. Here's some people that really can do the job, will be diligent, will turn up in time, and yeah, work the hell out of it. And is that something that they think that
oh,
the hub will start to provide?
yeah, this is the part that really gets me excited as a businesswoman.
Mhm.
And so I prefer to think when we speak to our corporate partners, I like to use the word investment. That implies that you're going to get something back out of it, that I'm going to measure it, that you're going to hold me responsible for that. But I think that because we're a 501(c)(3 here in America, that means we're a nonprofit or a
Mhm.
charity. You give us something, you get a write-off. It's an economic trade. So in some ways, we fundamentally understand that there's an economic basis to
Yeah.
it, but it's still benevolence, right? We think that people like my daughter, well, she can't work. She's on state benefits. So if she's not working, she doesn't have any disposable income. So therefore, she's not a consumer. We don't have developed products for her or even market toward her or make things simpler for her to engage in the economy. If she's not doing that, she's probably not voting. So, policies really aren't going to matter to her. We'll do it for her. I
Yeah.
know what she needs. And so, and as a mother, I've done that. I've caught myself doing that too,
Mhm. Yep.
speaking for her. And so we kind of pat them on the head and we give them a drink of water and we send them off to bed and try to keep them safe. I mean, not all of it is malevolent, or some of it's very well intentioned. As you mentioned earlier, it's to protect.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
protecting, but we're also limiting by doing that. So when we look at the power of the intellectually disabled community, there is power there. I don't like using the word charity, because what we are doing is we are investing in a group of people who have capability and will give us a return on that investment.
Mm.
If we keep people in isolation, if we keep them out of view, if we keep them out of the workplace, we are not even counting them in the economy. I mean, so that's with our folks in the economy. It's the pie gets bigger, so there is money to be made with this group of individuals. There are better policies to be had when
Yeah.
we include their voice instead of speaking for them. There are jobs to be filled. Let me give you an example. So, my daughter, I mentioned that there were two real aha moments. One was Special
Mhm.
Olympics for my daughter, and the second was because she had gone through Special Olympics and a leadership training program that we have for athletes who would like to flex their muscles in a different way. Um, she had the requisite skill base. She had done a resume. She learned how to speak and advocate for herself. So we put her into a competitive program called Project Search. It's actually a global program. And they actually partner with like hospitals or banks and different things to try to get the intellectually disabled community plugged in to jobs. And so she went to the large hospital system here in our state, and they had a program like that embedded in the hospital. And she was able to interview for that job because she had the skills that Special Olympics taught her. She got a spot, and she has now been working. She graduated from the program, was offered a position. She is working as a nurse tech, which means she does vitals, she charts. I do this because she puts catheters in. She does some pretty significant patient facing work, and she's done it for 5 years now. As a result of that, she does not receive state benefits. She has an income. She has a condominium that she lives in with a roommate. She does not drive, so she walks to work, but she's able to work at a hospital that's close by. She has a 401k, which means a retirement savings. She has meaning and purpose, and she is quite visible in the community, a patient-facing job. She's also a consumer, and I can speak to that based on our Amazon account. But the bottom line is that there's nothing charitable about her life. We
Yeah.
invested in her early, and now what she's been able to do is put herself on a trajectory. She's a meaningful, contributing citizen to this economy. But our economy didn't count on her. They didn't count
Yeah.
on her being in there. So when I talk to our corporate investors, that's what I'm talking about. And in this building that you mentioned, our Unified Sport and Inclusion Center, again, a world's largest, which is being looked at by Special Olympics Global as something they'd like to replicate. We have built it. We have created all the systems, all the spaces, everything from the color choice to the speaker systems and the audiovisual tech. And we've got heavy duty partners in there who are using us as a learning lab to figure out how to build the systems, the spaces, and the places from the ground up using the input from our population of people. So there aren't any accommodations that are needed in our building. When they arrive and cross our threshold, what they feel and what they see is, oh, they knew I was coming. And that's beautiful. And we are
Yeah.
employing people in the building. We also have a transition group of students, so students who have left high school but still need some additional education and workforce development training. There's an actual classroom of 15 students that meet daily in our building who in the afternoon learn workforce readiness. I'm sorry, in the morning, and in the afternoon, they actually work in our building, doing everything from office work to manning the front desk to facilities to groundskeeping, you name it. So employing people. As you say, it's really baked in to everything that we do. We want to walk the talk.
Yeah. So when CJ, when Claudia rang you or told you, hey, they've offered me a full-time position, Mom, did you literally just explode with pride? Did you think about that? And I'm feeling very emotional even asking the question. You must literally have been the proudest mum in the world.
I was and am. My husband and I had been planning on a retirement for three.
Yeah.
We had kept the house we were in for that reason. We had made all of our life's plans this way. And I had grieved the loss of the daughter I thought I would have. And then out of nowhere, I met the daughter I'm lucky to have. And yeah, I think it's fair to say that it was just about the most pride I've ever felt in my entire life. And every day that she maintains that job and grows her skill set, and actually she's applying right now to move to the children's hospital because she'd prefer to be out of surgery and into the ER working with kids. What did she say in her interview? Um, I was born here and I spent a lot of time here, and I'd love to be able to help a family like you guys helped me. She has the wherewithal and the understanding to see how her life has come full circle. And that gives me tremendous pride. But it also scares me that we kind of happened upon that path, happened luckily, and in large part due to our privilege. And I don't think that's how it ought to be. I think that this should be more intentionally woven into the fabric of our society. I think that we were lucky to find Special Olympics. We were lucky to find that workforce readiness program, lucky to live in a city where the hospital has that.
Yeah.
Lucky to have been able to find housing nearby because transportation is a huge issue for our population. And it will be my life's work for what remains, and possibly CJ's impact in this world, to move us out of of a of an ethos of accommodations and more into a society that intentionally plans for all of its members. And in that way, I think we will optimize what we were put here on this earth to do.
She's she's very proud of you as well, and I know she is.
Thank you.
And I yeah, I think this. I think sadly, not everybody is lucky enough to have a mum like you,
Oh,
or a dad like she has, or a grandparent like she has, or a sister like she has that have done these things. Because, and they say it's lucky, 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 but unless you'd looked and searched and fought and shouted and cajoled and persuaded and everything else, tickled, who knows what you did to get people on side. Yeah, that's you must want it to be that you don't need that. It's just there. You don't need to have this incredible mom that gets these things and understands it and wants to make things happen and stuff, and doesn't take no for an answer, and has that we absolutely can, and don't
yes.
you dare tell me we can't. And that's what you just want that to happen without having to have somebody doing it. And I just wonder, I'm not sure whether you can make a distinction really. How does Jen, the chief officer of strategic growth, differ from Jen, the daughter, mom, wife, friend?
It's so interesting. I've been asked that question, and in fact, members of my family were concerned when I was considering taking this job that I would have no separation. I would
Yep.
have no. It would be the entirety of my life, and that is a lot to carry every day.
Mhm.
I found, and I considered that as a potential concern for myself.
Mhm.
Now that I'm in it, and now that I'm here, um, I don't know why I ever thought I needed um, a difference or a balance. I love living the brand. I've now just leaned into it and embraced it. Um, it's all of who I am, and I think that that makes me a little more powerful. I think that when I was trying to separate myself from, work Jen to mom Jen to community leader Jen, when I was looking to have all these different versions of myself, I could only get so far. Now
Mhm.
that I've kind of joined together the power of all three of those, I'm much more formidable and clear, very clear on what I think needs to be done. And I love the fact that on any given time, I can wear all three hats on my head at the same time.
It's funny, isn't it? I've always taken real issue with the notion of work life balance.
Mm,
So I think it's yeah, it's just it's not a well. I'm sure for some people it is, but I have 8 hours doing this, 8 hours doing this, and 8 hours sleeping. I just think it's just who you are really. It's just if you find something that you love and you can commit to and you believe in, it's something that you it doesn't feel like work. And I know it is, but it's an easy thing to say. But you can get so much from it. And I have got a slightly lighter question for you.
sure.
So I happen to know you're a big Stevie Wonder fan.
Yes.
So I wondered if you could sing. No, no, no.
Oh,
I wondered
please
if you
don't
could
do
just.
that to the audience.
Okay, no. I just wondered if you could tell me what his music meant. I love Stevie Wonder. I love seeing him in concert. He's just such an amazing musician. Yeah, I just wonder how you feel when you hear his songs, when you listen to his music. What does it make you feel?
Oh, it's otherworldly. It really does take you to a place in your heart and in your soul, um, where you just, he, for a gentleman who hasn't seen anything, he sure has shown us a lot. And I think that, he has shown us what's most important, which is to feel. He has shown us what's most important, which is human connection. He has showed us that words matter. He has helped us tell a story, one of optimism, but also truth. And I think that, he's very prolific, and he can sing songs that I heard last week that he wrote at the age of 14.
Yeah,
And that ought to tell you how much words matter, right? That they
yeah,
still ring
absolutely.
true today. And that
Mm.
regardless of, how you vote, or where you live, or what color your skin is, or who you brought on a date to that event.
That's such a wonderful answer. I think that's all that's left to say is thank you so much for your time. You've been incredibly generous. I've enjoyed every single second of it. So yeah, more power to you and everything you're doing. Just keep it up. Just keep it up.